Hey everybody, it's Tyler, host of the Tyler Knows Everything podcast, where the nose is crossed out because I always want to learn more. My first live event, Saturday, September the 28th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at Hard Bean Coffee in Lumberton. So let's talk about what's going to happen at this live event. Well, you may have said to yourself, hey, that would be really cool to be a guest on a podcast, but I don't have enough content to say talk for an hour, or you may be nervous about it. Well, this is a chance that you can come by. I'm going to have the microphones, cameras all set up. Come chat with me for like 5 minutes, and then at the end of the live event, I'm going to splice together all the different clips and make one giant episode out of everybody that comes and stops by. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Tyler
knows
everything.
All right, everybody, we're here with Principal Dr. Belinda George on Tuesday. And so is there going to be a Tucked In Tuesday?
Oh, yes.
So you've been doing it all summer long.
All summer, no breaks.
Wow, year round.
Yes.
And so kind of before we talk about the Tucked In Tuesday, I kind of wanted to go over a little bit of maybe your origin story of how you went from being a student yourself to a PhD.
Okay, so I started off, I'm from Louisiana. You'll hear my accent come through quite frequently, but I lived in Chauvin, Louisiana, and it's kind of a poverty-stricken town, and so I had a not so pleasant kindergarten teacher, and I decided when I grew up I would be a teacher, so I could show her how to be a teacher, even though she would never know it. But I came to Beaumont. And, well, before I came to Beaumont, I was in the military. And because I couldn't afford to go to school, well, let me back up. I went to school, and my mom was very, very strict. There's 6 girls. My mom was very strict. And so she sent me to Nicholls State University, and I flunked out because I partied a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So she said, when you go back, it'll be because you paid for it. Well, I didn't have money or the resources, so the only resources I had was the government. So I joined the military, got the MGI Bill, and served 4 years in the military. I think 2 months short of 4 years.
And what branch did you go into?
Army.
Okay.
Army, and I got my started going to college there for education, and then I moved here. Started at Lamar. And I taught, I was teaching, absolutely loved it. I realized that's where I needed to be. And then I had an impact on kids outside of my classroom. So I was like, I need to get outside of these 4 walls. I talk about 4 walls all the time. Right. And so I went back to school for my master's so that I can be on an administrative level. And so I was a curriculum coordinator for 2 years, 4th grade teacher first for 5 years, coordinator for 2 years. And then I moved to the administration building as a supervisor, English language arts and early childhood supervisor for 1 year, and I was miserable because I missed the kids.
Oh, yeah.
And so I moved back. I took a cut in pay to go back to be an assistant principal at Guest Elementary. So I was there 2 years, and then the infamous RIF happened, reduction in force happened. And so I was sent to Central Medical Magnet High School for 2 years, and that's where my eyes opened up and realized the need for educators in the community to be outside of the 4 walls. So I went back to school to get my doctorate degree, and so that's how I got my doctorate.
Wow. Where did you do the master's and doctorate
Everything at? Lamar University.
Oh, that's awesome. And that's funny you say that because on a lot of my previous episodes, I try to kind of mirror the guests a little bit. And I wore my Lamar shirt.
Oh, wow.
I didn't actually know that you did all that at Lamar, but I was kind of going along with the theme of higher education and trying to get these students ready for college. And I actually went to Stephen F. Austin.
Okay.
I took some classes at Lamar, but my degree came from Stephen F. Austin, and Nicholls State was one of our rivals.
Wow. Yes.
For sports. And
Small world.
Yeah. What year were you at Nicholls State?
94.
Okay, so
94.
just a little bit before me. I was at Stephen F. Austin in 2000.
Okay.
Yeah, I was high school class of 2000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so after you made it into the principal role, you didn't want to just be in your office managing teachers.
I went from 4 walls in a classroom to 4 walls and a building. And so the building couldn't confine me to those four walls. And so I started doing home visits because when I was younger, my dad was an alcoholic, weekend alcoholic, and we had really rough weekends.
Yeah.
And so my teachers didn't know it because our mom, she sent us to school with our hair nicely combed, nicely dressed. And so my teachers missed me. And they would hug the smelly kids, the kids that misbehaved, the kids that needed the hugs. And they missed me. They didn't hug me because I looked like I was okay. And so that drives my home visits. When I go out to the homes, I want to make sure they're okay. And even if they aren't okay, I still want to provide the same love to every child. So
Yeah, that's amazing accountability for the parents.
Yeah.
And I read just the other day with kids, kids don't come up to you and say, hey, I need to talk to you, or I have anxiety. They say, my stomach hurts, or they say, can you play with me?
Or they show you by acting out.
Yeah.
They show you. So their way of, we had a little boy that would get off the van and hug the flagpole. And instead of him, he would walk past adults and go to the flagpole. But if you went to the flagpole, everybody saw you. So 3 or 4 would run, and he was hungry. When the line that he was in was going to the cafeteria.
Yeah.
But he wanted his food right then, sometime. So
Yeah. And is Beaumont ISD still doing the free breakfast?
free breakfast and lunch.
Oh, and lunch.
Lunch is
for
first
everyone.
this year.
Wow.
Everybody will get
Because
free.
I think I heard on the news that the particular campus that you were at, but before they do the free lunch, about 90% of your campus was on the reduced or free lunch program.
94%.
Yeah, and so what's significant about that is not for the lunch, but for the statistics that what you have to do to qualify is, be at a certain income level. So that means the majority of your students are probably in, maybe a one-parent household, or they're barely making ends meet probably.
And some of them are, and some of them are doing well, but there may be a lot of kids in the house.
Yeah,
And
true.
so, or they may be living with a grandparent or something of that nature, and so that qualifies them for things, but they don't know it. That's the beauty of kids.
Yeah.
When they come to school, they don't realize that somebody's struggling more than them, or they're struggling more. They don't see it.
Right.
They're totally oblivious until somebody brings it to their attention.
Yes, we were just talking about that with a friend of mine for new school shoes. My kids are growing. They're 13 and 10, and they're really hard on clothes at that age. And so I have no problem going and getting them just generic shoes, off-brand shoes, because they're going to grow out of them and they're going to get tore up. And my friend said, kids don't know what brands are cool until you tell them. And so if they see you making fun of a brand, then they didn't just make that up on their own. They got it from somebody.
Yes.
They got it from you.
And I love the kids. They'll tell you, like if you have on something, they'll tell you, I like what you have on. They don't do it to each other. And so I'm trying to teach kids to compliment one another. They can compliment adults fine because it's safe zone, but
Right.
we have that picking and taunting, and it doesn't necessarily happen at school. A bigger sister or brother may taunt.
Yeah.
And so that teaches them, and then they come to school. I remember that phrase, what are those?
Right.
If you had on a off-brand or a shoe, the
Yeah.
kids would say, what are those? And
Yeah.
even if it was a brand name,
Right.
it was just something
Okay.
catchy to do, and it would give the other kids complexes. So
Yeah. Did y'all go with the uniforms?
everybody in BISD's uniforms.
Did you see any significant changes in before and then after?
Last year I did push the uniforms a lot because I was really focusing on culture and climate. So this year I'm going to focus more on the uniforms. But they don't have any reason to tease when everybody
Yeah.
has on a navy blue, white, or red shirt, or
Right,
khaki or navy blue pants. They really ignore the shoes. It doesn't matter. Girls wear the bows to kind of, make the look cuter, but
Right.
not so much. Unfortunately, they find other reasons and other ways to tease.
Oh yeah, and I guess it's kind of like I used to watch Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and so he used to turn his jacket inside out to
Yes.
try to express himself a little bit. So talk about how Tucked In Tuesdays got started.
So I was on Facebook, and there's this wonderful group for administrators called Principals Leadership. And so I got in that group, and one night a principal was reading to her kids, and I said, God, I want to do that, but they won't come to the school. I said, well, how can I do it? So I thought I'll do it Facebook Live, and from my house, and I'll do it on a Tuesday. And so I made a post, put it on the Homer Drive page, and then the kids, I had about 35 viewers, and
Yeah.
they tuned in, and I read by Michael Hall. This book I read by Michael Hall,
Okay.
and red is about a red crayon. You see the red wrapper,
Mhm.
but he's a blue crayon and a
Oh.
red wrapper.
Right.
And so in the book, they continuously try to get him to color in blue and red, but he can't. He colors in blue, and they try to match him up with different crayons. They try to make him be red, and he doesn't. And so he runs away, and he meets this purple crayon that tells him, "Just could you draw an ocean for me?" And he does it, and then he realizes that's his purpose, to color blue. But his parents tried to, they cut the wrapper on him, they sharpened him, they put a scarf on him, and so he just continued to color blue. So
That's
I-
really cool how not only are you reading the book to them, but it also has kind of a
Yes.
story.
every book has to have
Yeah.
a lesson.
Right.
And so I read Michael Hall and I asked questions and we interacted. And then the next day, the kids came and said, "I saw your Christmas tree," and so because I was in front of the Christmas tree, and so the
Yeah.
conversation kind of happened. So they said, "Will you do it again?" So that Tuesday turned into another Tuesday, and so here it is, August, and I'm getting ready to do Tucked In Tuesday tonight.
Yeah, so it hasn't been quite a year yet,
No.
right? And along that time, some national news networks picked up on it.
Yes,
And then what happened?
So I was actually, when I did Tucked In Tuesdays, Beaumont Enterprise came and did a story, and I was reading. I can't name. Can't think of the name
Was
of
it
the
the
book.
one with the unicorn?
No, it was
What-
the
oh.
duck.
Oh,
it was
okay.
a chicken interrupting chicken,
Okay.
and so every time his dad would try to tell a story, he would interrupt. And he was real spastic, and so he would interrupt. And so I read that, and Beaumont Enterprise was taking pictures, and the kids could hear the camera, so I was explaining a little bit. And so by that time, people from maybe Houston were kind of tuning in. And so I remember the next day, Channel 6 or 12 came. Channel 12 came, but they left because they had an incident in Orange, and they went and covered that story. So Channel 6 came, and they did a story, and then the next day Channel 12 came. And I remember Mackenzie leaving from Channel 12, and I remember her leaving, and she said, "Your life is about to change forever." And I said, "No, it's not." And so we kind of laughed about it, and she closed my door. And so I called my friend Christopher Williams. He's like my spiritual advisor, if there's such a thing. And I said, "Guess what happened?" This lady said, "My life is going to change forever." So the next morning he calls me. He goes, "So?" I said, "I'm still black, still in Beaumont." So we laughed about it.
So did she know something at that time?
Well, she knows that when she uploads it locally, then she uploads it, and the sister networks get it, and it goes.
Okay.
So every morning I run the Facebook page, and people are slowly finding that out, that Dr. George runs the Facebook page. I'm the sole person that runs that page because I want to interact every chance I get.
Right.
And so I got on there because sometimes my parents will write me a note. Is it really pajama day? Because I have really, crazy days, and sometimes the kids will slip one in on the parents. And so I was checking for messages, and this lady said, "I just saw you on the news in Cincinnati." And I said,
Wow.
"I don't think so." And so I just put the wow emoji, and I Googled my name, and there was news station after news station after news station. And so I went to work, and I was telling Miss Turner, I said, the Peeps clerk, I said, "Miss Turner, look at this." And so I'm scrolling through, and no, it was another teacher. We were scrolling through and looking, and we're like, "That's crazy." And so Miss Turner comes in, and she said, "The Steve Harvey Show is on the phone." And I
Wow.
said, "Quit joking." She said, "No, they are." And so my phone rang, and it said NBC Universal. And I jumped, and I said, "Dr. George speaking," and it was someone from the Steve Harvey Show.
Oh my goodness.
And so he was calling at the time, just, at the end of the Steve Harvey Show, they do a little clip at the end, and they talk about the person.
That's right.
That's all they wanted, was permission to do that.
Okay.
And so I said, "Sure." So I called BISD to make sure it was okay. And so that weekend I was in bed, and the lady from Washington Post, she had did a story. And that's when it really, that has 15 million views, that post. And so her name was, I think, Ann Klein. I want to say Ann. And so she called me, and she called me Saturday. I was in bed, and she said, "So, are you busy?" And I said, "Kind of." And she said, "You getting a lot of strange phone calls?" And I said, "Kind of." And she said, "Well, it's going to get crazy." And she said, "Just call me if you need anything." And so I hung up. And then the Steve Harvey Show called again. And when they called, they actually wanted me on the show. And so I was like, "Oh my God, they want me on the show." And so then this guy from London called. Well, he sent me a Facebook message, and he wanted to do story.
Right.
So I called him and did a phone interview, and then that story went up, and so it got international. And so my guess, if you tune, like last Tuesday, there was a little girl there's Africa, there's Nigeria, there's Greenland, from all over. So it's international. They listen, and the most touching moment was this lady from Mexico, and she said, we tune in because we don't have American books here, and this is the only way he can get access to American books.
I mean, your footprint has just increased
and it's crazy
globally.
Because today I said, I don't know why they want to do a podcast. I mean, I'm just reading a book. Because it's work to me. It's something that I feel like needs to be done, and I like doing it.
Yeah.
And so I schedule my life around Tucked In Tuesdays. Yeah. And so one day I was at work, and Lester Holt called. And
that's the one that I saw. That was NBC Dateline with Lester Holt.
The Ellen Show called, and
did you?
That's hard to get on. It's a kind of.
So they kind of call and get a story.
Well, if you're already too popular, then Ellen doesn't have a need to introduce you to the world.
Oh, so that's kind of her mission.
Yes, to introduce you to the world, and I had kind of gotten a lot of publicity on my own.
Because your first one had about 30 people tuned in.
Yes.
So how many are tuning in here recently?
Well, they tune in and numbers change between 45. But then when I get off, there's like 1,000 views in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's different people dropping on and off.
It stays there after you go live.
And so at night, sometimes the author, because what I've been doing the last couple of times is the author of the book, they come on, and I put them on Facebook Live so the kids get to meet the author. And that's my favorite part. Like, I read and I interact, but when that author comes on, it's just like magic. That you wrote the book.
So have you been contacted by authors that want you to read their book?
My office, if we had did this podcast in my office, there's a round carousel that is full of books, bookshelves full of books. Some of them are autographed to me.
Because they're sending them to you.
Yes. One of the best emails I got was from Sesame Street.
Yeah.
And so Elmo autographed me this Dr. George, Elmo Loves You. And so they sent me a box of stuff. They had a Tickle Me Elmo. Well, I wanted a Tickle Me Elmo. They didn't have it, but they found one, I think in Ohio. And so they bought me an Oscar the Grouch and an Elmo onesie. And so as a lot of people I meet that I don't actually meet, but they'll reach out. So authors do it all the time. The author tonight found me. It's Birds of Paradise. And so it's about 2 birds. And so she reached out to me about her book. And so I read their books. And some of the books, you have to have permission to read their books. Now, the book, Michael Hall's book, the publishing company sent me 1,000 books.
Wow.
And so the kids I have one copy, and then the rest went to the library.
Oh, okay.
But one copy of each book that they sent. So I have full rights to read those books.
Okay.
But I like those authors are hard to get because they're pretty fancy authors.
Sure.
But Michael Hall did tune in.
Man, that's incredible. And I heard another thing from Roy West that said you have the students refer to each other as scholars instead of, hey, you.
So I went to the Ron Clark Academy, and they call their kids scholars. And I absolutely loved it because I believe that if you tell people stuff enough, they start to believe it.
Yeah.
And so I refer to everything that goes home scholars is in it. I refer to the kids as scholars. The teachers call them, if they catch themselves saying students, they'll go, I'm sorry, scholar. No matter what they do, they're still a scholar.
See, I called them students several times here,
Yes.
so I've got to refer to them for the remainder of this podcast as scholars.
They're scholars.
And it makes sense for behavior purposes too, because if I were in the office, for fighting or something, and you say what happened, oh well, I hit a scholar. It sounds kind of silly.
And they do say it.
Yeah. And so it makes you kind of change your mindset that you're speaking positivity into who they are.
All the time. There was a poem, I Ain't Got a Pencil. I don't know if you've seen that floating around.
I have.
Okay, so Joshua Dickerson.
Yeah, so it was a kid talking about everything they had to do to go through just to get to school. And you can probably elaborate on it. I was just going to affirm that I know it.
You're right. Keep going.
And then when he gets to school, he gets fussed at for not having a pencil.
Yes.
And
his alarm clock doesn't go off, all that stuff.
Had to get siblings ready. And
yes. So Joshua Dickerson, I say, when I become a principal, I'm going to have that guy at my school. And I did. So he came in from Georgia, and he came and spent the whole day at Homer Drive. And so he came out and he met the kids and he talked to the kids and he taught them 10 words. And we still live by those 10 words. If it is to be, it is up to me.
Yeah.
So I tell the kids all the time in the announcement, if it is to be, it's up to me. And from pre-K to 5th, they can all tell you that means if you want to have a bad day, you mess up, and Dr. George will make sure you have a bad day.
Yeah.
And if you want a good day, you make sure you do something good, and Dr. George wants you to have a good day, so you'll have a good day. And I said, just like Walt Disney, I will make sure your wish comes true.
Yeah.
But if it is to be your day, as little as you are, you determine your day. Nobody else. You determine how you respond. So if it is to be, it is up to me.
Yeah, my friend says that too. Damon West. Have you
Oh.
heard the Damon West story?
No.
He's the only Division I college quarterback.
Oh, yes, he's my
And-
Facebook friend.
Yeah,
I take
so,
that back.
so he's episode 1 of my podcast. But yeah, he's the only Division I college quarterback to ever receive a life sentence in prison.
Yes.
And obviously he's out. It's only
Yes.
been almost a decade that he was in it, but he was sentenced for 65 years. And he travels around to schools to he's become a motivational speaker to tell his story, and he tells the coffee bean story, which you maybe have you ever heard the coffee bean story? When he was in prison, he had to survive prison to not be changed who he was. So a guy gave him a piece of advice that saved his life. He said, when you go into prison, there's 3 things you could be: a carrot, the egg, or a coffee bean. And prison's like a high pressure situation, a pot of boiling water. He said the carrot goes into the pot of boiling water, and the carrot gets soft. You don't want to be the carrot. The carrot gets robbed, gets beat, it comes out defeated, probably even killed. The egg has a harder, outside protective shell. He's fine on the outside, but he gets hard boiled on the inside. He goes into prison and gets changed. He should just stay because he's not the same person. But the coffee bean, the smallest of the 3, goes into the pot of boiling water, and the coffee bean changes the water. You can't call it water anymore. You got to call it coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
So he said, when you become a coffee bean and you spread that positive energy, you find other coffee beans, and that was kind of the analogy.
I love that. He's my
yeah.
Facebook friend. He just recently got married.
That's right.
Now,
yeah.
I've never met him, but if there's somebody that's like aspiring, I kind of take a chance on him.
Right.
So I did, and he accepted my Facebook request.
Yeah, that's good because he actually reached his limit pretty soon. So he can't have any more Facebook. He's got to create a like a public page.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, he's been traveling to all the Division I colleges.
Love him.
Because those quarterbacks or those athletes are in his shoes back then, and some of them they get a first time offense or something like that, and he tells them not to go down the path that he was in. So that's a really cool story too. It made me see a lot of similarities. And then when you said that it is to be, it's up to me. And I try to live by that too, because I truly believe that you're in control of your mood when you wake up. You decide that you're going to be in a good mood or a bad mood, and you get to choose. So you might as well choose to make it a good one. Another one of my favorite authors and influences, he was a former Navy SEAL, David Goggins. He says when someone, say somebody says something hurtful to you, and you're thinking about it hours later and days later and weeks later, you're allowing that to take up space in your mind, and you have to get that out of there. That you shouldn't let that occupy your mind. And I'm a big believer in positive energy, and I know just from, this is the first time I met you, just from meeting you the first time, my mood immediately elevated, because it's like we're on the same wavelength of positive energy, and you really have that ambience of just a light or a positive energy that it's hard to describe, but you come across people like that, and those are the people you want in your circle. That they're not going to bring you down. They add value to your life.
And I always tell the kids when they come in, they're mad with their friend, and I look at them, and I always say, "You gave them complete power. They're controlling you, and
That's
if
right.
they don't control me." And I said, "Oh yes, they do. They're making you not even look at them. Right now, they're making sure you can't look at them. Then they look."
Yeah.
And I said, "Don't let them control you. They're making you stop smiling, and then eventually you'll see." But you have to tell the kids constantly, because kids suffer with not knowing how to do conflict resolution. The first option is fighting. They want to fight, and it's not. You can actually talk through things. So what I tell the kids is, come in and talk. I'm going to turn. I'm not going to listen to what you're saying. I'm just going to hear you. But if you don't talk, I'm going to give a punishment. Well, sometimes they opt for the punishment because it's just too hard to sit and find out the why. But sometimes if they're older, I make them do it.
Right.
And I say, you're not going to take, why? That's like going to jail without telling your side.
Yeah.
Tell your side what happened. And most of the time they look at each other and go, That's not what I said. It's normally it's a he say she say kind of thing.
Yeah, and I really have to commend you for doing so much beyond your job description. You're not just making sure they learn math and reading and writing. You're doing a lot of life skills that sometimes is dependent upon the teacher that they have or the principal that they have. There's a lot of schools that they could end up, all over the place and all over the world where they're not going to get any of that. They're just the teacher may just be punching the clock. And
Yeah.
so how do you motivate your staff to?
So lots of motivation, lots of support from my business partners. I have great business partners.
Oh, so you don't call them teachers?
No, well, here's the reveal.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to give you the reveal because they won't see it. But tomorrow the teachers come back. So last year I rolled out the scholars, and they've got that. A teacher can't teach a scholar. Only professors can. So my teachers will become professors, and their classes will become Bobcat University because that's our mascot, a Bobcat.
I like it.
So it will be Bobcat University. Our theme is also Wizard of Oz. And all year, I want the kids to find a wizard. There will be little things to make them find a wizard. Well, you never find a wizard because you're the wizard. You can only grant yourself the heart, the brain, the courage. It's in you. You just have to tap into it. And so all this time we're going to be doing things to build on those things that they go to the wizard for when all along it was in them, the courage, the strength.
And it's also a powerful testimony too of your origin story.
Yes.
You didn't grow up in a privileged household or a Leave It to Beaver, dinner's ready and we're all sitting down together. And you're positive proof that you made it into school administration, higher education, from multiple levels, master's degree, PhD. Do you ever put that story into play for some of
I do tell the kids a lot of times. I remember I was talking to the kids and I told them my dad was in jail and they, and then one little girl goes, my dad was in jail. And she crossed her eyes and made this funny little face, but it was like she was so excited.
Right.
And so a couple of other kids put their hand up, well, my mom's in jail. And then I say, well, we'll talk about it individually.
Yeah.
But to have your principal have something remotely close to you. And I tell the kids, food stamps, and they look like, you know what that is? Yes, I had them, and they were little bills when I had them. There wasn't a card. You had to go in the store and have the coupon in your hand. And so just the kids knowing that Dr. George walked in my shoes before gains a lot of respect.
Yeah, it does, because you see a lot of schools that bring someone in like a motivational speaker, and they may not, they have good words to say, but they haven't been in those shoes, and it really does make a difference when you've been in those shoes. I always find myself, both of my parents were school teachers, so I kind of went to a 2A high school, which was, I graduated about 67 people.
Yeah.
And so I went to school with my parents. I mean, they were there all the time, even because it was a small campus, and they both coached and taught in high school, and so I had a good childhood. I was an only child, and I used to struggle with trying to motivate other people because I didn't have that overcoming obstacle story or anything, and then I kind of switched that into what I said, the positive energy and the outlook on things.
Yeah, it's not everybody that goes through a rough childhood comes out like this.
Sure.
But I remember my mom and my dad, her sitting, because it's 6 girls. There were no boys. And I remember her sitting, and I was little, and I always tell this story, and she said, when you all grow up, I want you to have your own job, so when you get ready to leave, you can leave. You don't have to depend on a man for money, the resources for you to leave. You can just leave. So from 16 years old, I'm 42 years old, I've always worked.
Yeah.
And so I went to school because I didn't want to ever have to depend on anyone or anybody. My husband always says, you don't have to work. Yes, I do. I have to. And I know that if I didn't work, I'd be well taken care of. But for me, I just have to do it because my mom never did it.
Yeah, that was something I did too. As soon as I turned 16, I was counting down the days because I was an only child, so I was very independent. I never had brothers or sisters that I could get to help do something, and so I still kind of struggle with that when I really need help with something I don't ask. But yeah, I started sacking groceries at 16, and then before that, we always do little odd jobs anyways before you're working for a company, and that's always been important to me, even through college when there wasn't as much time to work as you could be studying. I would always get some sort of a small job. There's never been a period of my time where I wasn't working. I just wanted to feel like a useful person. I didn't want to have to ask for help all the time.
Yeah, and it's okay to ask for help sometimes, but
right.
not fully dependent on help,
Yeah.
especially like my husband uses the word able body.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
said, especially if you're an able body person.
Sure. So where did you guys meet?
So in Louisiana, my
Uh-huh.
husband is 30 years my senior. And so he's like my biggest fan.
Yeah.
Like he said, where are you going? What are you going to talk about? And so he's actually like my set person for Tucked In Tuesdays. He gets my lighting right. We
Oh,
have this
wow.
whole, he calls me Readzilla.
Yeah.
Because when I'm getting ready to read, I'm like,
But
did
that's
you
really
do this?
cool.
Did you do this?
It's cool that he's in on it, though.
Yes, he
Yeah.
does. And so I read and he goes in the other room and he turns on his phone and he watches me live. So I give him shout outs. I remember one time he was in the kitchen and someone said, tell Mr. George to stop making noise. And so, because they can hear him because the house is so quiet.
Yeah. Does he ever come visit you at the school for lunch and
He
things?
actually, he came over to the school. I had a doctor's appointment in Houston. And so he had to drive me. So he came in and I was getting the kids off the bus. And I said, I can't go to Houston. I got to get the kids off the bus.
Yeah.
And so I was getting the kids off the bus and he goes, hey, hey. And I said, what? And I'm hugging kids. I'm picking kids up. I'm wiping noses, everything. Me and my AP and everybody that helps. And he goes, their pants are too short. They have a hole in it. Their shirt's dirty. And I said, yeah, but they don't know. Go, good morning. You look great today. And just put them on the bus. And so on the way to Houston, he said, hey, so why do you think they're, And I said, they may have other siblings. Mom works. They didn't see them before they left, or they just can't get the uniforms. It's no big deal. And he says, how much are uniforms? And I said, I guess you could get one for like 12, the tops and bottoms. And so he went, I went to Houston. He came home and he called me. He said, I got $500. He went around asking people to donate money to get money. So he raised $1,500. He bought 44 uniforms for 44 kids, 2 sets. He went in the mall. I mean, we had to use the back door of the uniform store because we had so many bags. And we brought these kids and we asked the teachers for those kids and we brought them in and let them try it on uniforms. And I remember this little boy, he told my husband said, you have on an undershirt, right? And he said, yes. He said, you can take that off and try on this shirt. And he says, but my undershirt's dirty. And my husband said, but it's okay. And he raised it up and it was brown. And my husband said, well, you can go in the bathroom and change. And that kind of choked him up a little bit.
Yeah.
And so when the little boy came back, he got the shirt and my husband said, I'll be right back. So he came back and he had deodorant, he had socks, he had underwear, he had everything. And so he said, call that little boy back. And so I called him back and the little boy hugged him. And he said, I'm sorry for hugging you. And he said, no, it's okay. It's okay. And he said, can you do me a big favor? And my husband said, what is it? He said, write my name on my socks so nobody can take them. So we wrote his name on his socks. And so that story changed my husband because he would always say, you're spending money on those kids again? You're going out there those kids again? But now he sees the purpose.
Yeah.
Now, if we're coming from the grocery store and I say, I just need to ride through there, he comes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's really cool that y'all have become a team.
Oh, yeah, a team.
And so what are some of the other things that you brought over there?
So this is my staff they watch my journey. And so at the end of the school year, they surprised me with this book. And this is just, I'm a first year principal.
Oh, okay.
So like you do stuff and you don't realize it's your first year. So my first thing I did was a meet the principal event because people didn't know me. I was new to the school. So I had my husband a barbecue, all this stuff, bring this food, and hardly anybody came. So what I did is I took the leftover food and I brought it to the apartment complexes. And so I got some kids, there's some pictures with some kids, we gave out the remaining food. And so here's like convocation, and this is the first day of school. We did the red carpet. So they were all VIPs last year. And so it just Chick-fil-A, our business partner. And then it just kind of, you'll see my life when it hits. So that's my birthday. And so little things I did for my staff, I gave them everything that's on here. And I gave them this card, and they all had something and it had meaning to each thing. And so I wrote them a letter, all of them a letter for Christmas, and I dressed up, And so as you go on, you'll see Tucked In Tuesday starting to happen. This was the 100th day of school, Miss Bertha, and she's 100 years old. And so then I did a pasta night with the kids, and then I started reading around this time. So we had a Mardi Gras parade because I'm from Louisiana. Some of the kids had never been to Mardi Gras. So Fat Tuesday, if you're not doing anything, you come to the Mardi Gras parade.
That's right.
And so I started, and so this is when Tucked In Tuesday started. So my staff, unbeknownst to me, was taking pictures and the Steve Harvey show. And that's when I went on Michael Strahan and Sarah. And so they were taking pictures off my Facebook page. And this is an author, a husband and wife, when we went to Los Angeles. We got to go to their house and eat dinner. And so these are all pictures from Tucked In Tuesday. And I made a thank you card because I was getting so much. So I did a thank you card. But yeah, and it goes on and on.
What was it like to meet Steve Harvey and Michael Strahan in person?
So, you know what? I tell everybody, people don't understand the meaning of surreal until it happens to you. So every time I went, God gave me a way to make them not be superstars.
Right.
So every moment that I went in, I was doing it when I went, I was getting the experience for my kids, not for me. So when you ask me about my experiences, I sound like I was watching them instead of sitting next to them. Like people say, what did he smell like? I don't know.
Yeah, because if you're starstruck, then you can't be yourself.
Yes. And so I thought I would have been starstruck. I really thought I would, but then I go out and, there's no grace period of they come backstage and they meet you. No, they pull you on the stage and then they say 5, 4,
wow.
and then it happens.
Just like today.
Just like today. It kind of just happens. And so God allowed me to have this peace and be able to talk to them like they were just everyday people. And then people ask me like, Michael Strahan, was he really that tall? But I didn't see him like a face-to-face. I saw him like as a viewer because I was taking experience for my kids.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I was more curious maybe about their presence or their charisma or...
So Steve Harvey is very raw. So when we were in the dressing room, he does his show without edits. So it was like watching him live on stage. Yeah. And so we laughed. My husband's a huge Steve Harvey fan. So there was a lot of laughing. And of course they had to edit his show a lot because he talks like Steve Harvey does.
Right.
Now, Michael Strahan, when I came out, the funniest story I can tell is I came out and I was with one of the producers and I came out and Who's the Boss? The guy from Who's the Boss?
Oh, is it Tony Danza?
Tony Danza.
Yeah.
So he was standing there and I turned around and I said,
he was like a guest before you.
He was coming on after me.
Oh, okay.
But he was watching.
I forgot that there would be other celebrities.
Yes, he was watching the people on the stage. So fast forward to Tony Danza. I walk up and Tony Danza's there and I'm watching these two men sword fighting on the stage. Okay, so I don't know who they are, but I definitely know who Tony Danza is. And so he doesn't want to take a picture, and I'm fine with that. And so Tony Danza, walks off, and the lady says, let me get a picture. He walks off. And so out come these two men, and they look at me. One of the men, he looks at me, and I said, hi, how are you? And he says, how are you? And he stared, and I stared, and I went on stage. When I got off, I went on Facebook Live telling people to watch, and that was the guy from Star Wars Jedi.
Oh, okay.
The
of the
original.
Star Wars movies.
Yeah, he was
Mark Hamilton?
Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
We were right next like this to each other, and I had no clue. I still don't know who he is.
Yeah.
No clue who he was. And so somebody said on Facebook, please tell me you got an autograph. He was on there. And I said, I didn't. And they said, he was on the show. And so when I watched the show and I said, was within 5 feet, not even 5, like 12 inches of the guy.
Yeah.
And did not know.
And you probably wouldn't be alone with most women.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of science fiction Star Wars fans.
I had some very disappointed friends. But when I went on Good Morning America, Shaq was there.
Oh,
and he was on there all morning. They extended his stay, but I thought I won't be But they told me if I had said anything, he would have gladly let me come out and take a picture.
Yeah, he's an old LSU alumni.
Yes.
Yeah, I went to a restaurant in Baton Rouge and they had one of his shoes it was kind of like a sports bar, and man, it's just a massive. It's longer than my arm. It looks like
it's huge.
But did you get to walk by him, or did you?
I didn't. I was in the room, in my dressing room, and so you kind of stay in there. But when I went on Steve Harvey, I walked in, and the lady said, "Excuse the noise, that's Robin Thicke." I went, Robin Thicke, and so I called my friend because he was in the dressing room right next to me, so I could hear him saying, "How did I sound?" And I said, "Great," through the wall.
Yeah.
But he was there, and he performed on Steve Harvey the night the Braxton sisters, they were there. So you don't see everybody because there's so many doors and so many sets, and it's just amazing how much.
I think we're going to see the guy from Star Wars tweet, I got to meet Dr. Belinda George. It's pretty soon.
Well,
Maybe a year from now, that's what he'll say.
well, I everything that's happening, it's and people reaching out for me to speak at different events, and it's just surreal that people.
Has it gotten overwhelming, or do you?
At one point, it did.
Because principals are busy.
Yes, at one point I was very overwhelmed because I do Tucked In Tuesday by myself. I don't have a Tucked In Tuesday assistant.
Yeah.
Everything, me inboxing the authors and saying, I'm scheduling your book for such and such. We're going to do a practice run at such and such, because I do a practice run with my authors. And then people come in because they think I'm reading. And so sometimes they come in and they type, just do this. They're helping the author. And so I think one of the biggest things that happened is Facebook. They sent me an inbox. And they said, we need you to call for a conference call. And so I thought, what did I do wrong? Maybe I'm not supposed to read books on Facebook. And so I called. And so when I called, the two girls were laughing. And I said, well, what's going on? And she said, she said, so there's this traffic that was going to this one page. She said, it's like overnight, like all this traffic started going. It was like, what's going on? So we went to the page, and there's this principal reading. She said, it's you, and you brought all these people from all these countries together through an act of kindness. And she said it was kind of just, you're not famous, and that just doesn't happen to everyday people unless they're trying to go viral.
Yeah.
And so we have a conversation. They asked me, could they do a post? And I sign a release, and they make this post about me. And in the post, they say, what are some of your favorite books? Well, they send me all of those books.
And that was Facebook.
This was Facebook.
Corporate.
Yes.
Called you on the phone.
Yes, Facebook.
Like, hello, this is Facebook.
Facebook. And so one night I was reading, and it popped up Facebook, and they said, enjoying the story. And I said, oh, well, hello, Facebook, because I always say hello to my people that are tuning in. And so I said, hi, guys, it's Facebook. And I was thinking Facebook is watching me read. But they did tune in, and they sent me the Portal Plus, because eventually they want the Portal Plus to go live. It doesn't go live yet, but go live. So when I'm reading, I can actually move around, and the camera follows you on the Portal
Wow.
Plus.
So they sent you that.
They sent me that.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yes.
Wow. So what's the grade level that you have at
Pre-K through 5.
Okay.
Pre-K through 5. And I was just saying the other day, well, that was just today, I said, God, the demographics of the school are changing, because it was predominantly African American, and I see people coming in, and they're not. They're Hispanic, they're white, it's more. We had a few, but there's more. But that's such a good feeling to see that that people are bringing their kids to their school, because that means they feel safe. That means they're...
I think people are coming back to public school.
Coming back to public schools. And so I like that, just seeing the differences in even the economic range of people coming back, where we got a kid from Santa Ana, and I was thinking, whoa, that's like major.
Yeah,
but
because usually it's the other way around.
Yes, but she said, I saw what you're doing, and I really do like what you're doing, so I'm going to try my daughter there. So it's a really good feeling.
Yeah, for sure. So what's are there any particular books or influencers that you draw inspiration from for yourself?
Every book I read, honestly, there's always a lesson for me. Sometimes I find it before, and I try not to read the book too much before, because what happens is I read the book and I take away the excitement and I just read it. So I kind of scan it, and then when I read it, then I become part of the book. And so there was a little book, Scribble, and Scribble was kind of like me. I'm a unicorn in a world of horses. I tell that to everyone. And so Scribble was just that, a scribble. And so he was in this book with black and white drawings, and he kept wanting to add color, and nobody wanted him to. So one day he colored, and everybody opened their eyes and realized what Scribble did, that it just took him seeing their purpose. They weren't just a drawing. It's actually a house, and people would actually come to you if you look presentable. And so there was a lady that inboxed me and said, Scribble saved her life, that book. Just a book, just her purpose.
Yeah.
Her purpose. And so I inbox her the next morning, have a great day. And sometimes if they send me things like that, or sometimes they'll say, nobody ever said they love me, because at the end I always say, if nobody else tells you, Dr. George loves you.
Oh, yeah.
And so the adults sometimes never were told that as kids. And so a lot of adults come and watch it, just because they didn't have a childhood. There was one little girl that went foster home to foster home, and she said this reminds her of what it was like to be a kid, what it was supposed to be like. So my inspiration comes from the viewers, that are listening, and every book has a lesson. Every book.
Yeah. And I'm always trying to improve myself as a parent and learn to do things, especially when they're entering the teenager, preteen year. That's
Yes.
new territory for me.
Yes.
So, one thing I read was that, of course, you need to tell them that you love them and give them affection, throughout the day when you can, but you have to really try hard to make sure you don't get too busy to do a minimum of 2 touches a day, which is first thing when they wake up in the morning, and then last thing before they go to bed.
Yes.
Give them that good night hug and a kiss, and the good morning hug and a kiss. So that
Yes.
that's if nothing else happens throughout the day, I always try to make sure I get
That in.
those 2 touches.
I went to dinner with Roy West and his wife.
Yeah.
And I told him I didn't have kids. Always wanted kids. 6 sisters.
So right now, no kids.
No
right?
biological.
Okay. Yeah. But you have thousands.
Yes, I have thousands.
Thousands
And
of
so
children.
6 girls. And if there was one that couldn't have kids, I never thought it would have been me.
Mm.
And so it was me. And I wanted kids more than my sisters, and they all had kids. And so that's another reason I went into education, because there was such a void.
It might have been your purpose.
I wanted to help so many kids. And I told Roy West, I said, I don't want you to take this wrong. I said, but if parents can see kids through my eyes. And I said, because kids are such a blessing. I mean, you made this little baby that grows up and looks like you and does something that you do that you didn't teach them. And I said, that's just amazing to me. I said, and then the moments that parents miss with their kids. And I said, I'm not trying to make you feel guilty.
Right.
I said, but there's so many moments I watch parents with kids, when kids will grab their hand and they'll go, stop, it's hot.
Oh,
and I
right.
would kill for those moments,
Yeah.
for a kid to grip my hand. And, and my sister says, yeah, you're saying that because you're not a parent. And I thought, no, if I were, those are moments that you don't get back. That one time you swatted their hand, they don't do it again.
No.
They don't do it again. And so I said, if parents can see their kids through my eyes.
Yeah, because they eventually grow out of the age where they sit with you on the couch, or when they enjoy you dropping them off at
Yes.
school, or there's so many things that they're going to grow out of that you wish you would have done.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But when I went to high school, the same method that I use with little kids, I use with high school kids. The same. I wasn't tougher on them. I wasn't harder on them.
Yeah, that's
the
interesting.
same exact thing. And guess what? You telling a high school kid that you're disappointed works just the same if they were in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. And so I built relationships with those kids. They text, they inbox, stories of things I didn't realize I did to help them. But you just have to be really careful. And I told Roy West, one thing I'm really big on is that we have so much crime within our little community.
Right.
And it happens because if I never met you and I was going to rob you, it would be more easy for me to rob you. But if I sat down with you, I'm more apt not to do it, because for one, you can recognize me.
Yeah.
And for two, there's a relationship, there's something. And so I say we've got to start forming relationships with people, with kids, so that when they grow up, they'll remember.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It'll take a while, but it eventually stops.
Do you have any other hobbies outside of the reading and
Dancing. We
Oh,
dance
wow.
a lot at Homer Drive. So Monday, I get really excited. You saw me squirm. See, so we dance.
all
So
the hobbies come back to the school, it looks like.
it does everything. Well, I have a pet turtle that I found in the road, and she's been on Tucked In Tuesdays a couple of times.
neat.
Spending time with my family. I also cricket, make the shirts and things like
Yeah.
that. But
What's the turtle's name?
Franny Faye George. So at first it was Franklin, and then Matthew saw it on Facebook and said, that's definitely a girl. And so I had to put a bow on her and do a gender reveal because she wasn't a boy. And so, but Franny is a very smart turtle. If I call her name, she'll run to the side of the tank, put her hands up, take me out of here, and
Oh, that's
let her
pretty
walk
neat.
around a little bit. She's a little small box turtle.
Yeah. So what's the next big thing for Dr. George?
The next Texas Country Reporter will premiere in September.
Okay.
And so they film during the school year.
Yeah, and I think they're originally from this
Yes,
area.
they
Kelly
are.
Phillips and Bob Phillips.
So they caught the dancing. They came on a Friday, and so they caught more than just Tucked In Tuesday.
That's where you can get on Ellen, would be the dancing.
Well, if she knew, I talked about the dancing, but I think you have to you have to come on Friday. I told Roy West, I said, so Friday morning I do announcements like I always do. We do the positive positive affirmations, the 10 words. And then I say, now it's time to dance. And I pick a song. And then I literally run out of my office, down the halls, waving my arms, spinning around. I'll grab a kid, spin them around, grab their hand, because they know if the music's playing, they're probably late. So there's kids running on Friday trying to get in the building because I go into classrooms and dance. So the anticipation has gotten so great that the kids go in the hall because they can't wait. Is she going to come in? Is she not going to come in? So they dance in the halls. We line dance in the halls, and then I'll run to the next building. And sometimes I tap on the glass, and I'm doing this, and the teacher goes, there she is again. But
yeah, me and my daughter love to dance. We videoed ourselves doing the Get Up, which
Oh,
is that
yeah.
popular dance. And we went around town through Beaumont, through all Western places. So there's a place between Beaumont and Lumberton that it's like a Western Railroad looking shopping center. So we did there. We did the top of a parking garage where you can see the Beaumont Water Tower.
Wow.
And then we went out to Lamar with the Spindletop oil derricks and downtown Beaumont. And it started to it kind of got a lot of shares, and so that she brought it as a joke. She's like, we might get to dance on Ellen. And I said, I don't know if we'll make it to
I'll
to that
share it
level,
because
but
one of Ellen's producers are my Facebook friends.
yeah, you'll have to give me a little tag. And but yeah, we had the first one that I went to, for my daughter's school, daddy daughter dance, and some of the dads, they're kind of like, oh, I have to be here. And I kind of, like you said earlier, with those moments, like there's gonna be a moment where we don't have any more daddy daughter dances, so we made the most of it. We were dancing. We had a dance off with other dads that I'm friends with, and I'm looking forward to the other one. That's another one of those moments.
Yeah, those moments.
Well, so first year principal, you're kind of on the upswing of everything. What do you have, like a dream position in the public school system, or do you think you're doing it right now?
This is it. I don't see myself being an assistant superintendent or this is it.
Yeah, because I think anything higher, you're in that
I
office.
lose the kids.
You've got the walls.
Yes, and I don't need the walls.
Right.
And so I'm able to get out tomorrow. My staff, they don't know it yet, but we're going to house furniture. Well, they know about house furniture, and they're going to use the recliner gallery, and I'm going to do PD. That's just their welcome back, because why make them sit in wooden chairs, right?
Yeah.
So after that, with our amazing business partners, including Roy West, I'm sending teachers out to give back to our business partners before school starts. So they're going to volunteer between 10:15 and 11:30.
Okay.
And so with Chick-fil-A, and they all have their own little spot. They don't know their assignments yet. They don't even know they're doing it. But neither do our business partners when they come to our school. They never know what to expect. And I just want them to see that you're not just sitting on your couch and going, you know what, I think I'm going to go to Homer. You have to sacrifice something.
Yeah, and that's a program that other people can get into. It's the BISD Business Partners.
Yes.
Local businesses all throughout Southeast Texas can contact BISD Administration Building, and usually I talk to Debbie, that's in PR, and you can kind of volunteer to get with a certain campus.
Yes.
And over the course of the year, you go to certain things. Like I went to one. I had the early college high school. And I welcomed the students on the first day, coming off the bus. I actually gave a speech called Things I Would Teach My Younger Self. And I was trying to convey all those things to high school seniors that you don't typically learn in school. What is a credit score, and how to keep that up, and how that's going to play into your a lot of decisions that you make as an adult. How to audit your circle of friends. When you pick a major, you don't necessarily want to go to a private college if you want to be a kindergarten school teacher. You really need to evaluate your situation, and if you're going to take student loans for an entire college education, be careful where you go. Where you could go to Lamar, or you could go to SMU, and that's going to be a big difference. So just stuff like that I was.
Yeah, and that's good. I put out a plea for business partners, because it's so important. And I always tell my people, shy away because they think we want something. Well, at Homer Drive, Mr. West can tell you, Chick-fil-A can tell you, Westgate can tell you, all of my business partners, Sylvan, they can all tell you I've never asked for a thing, and they've given me everything. Because I said, if I have to ask you for something, that means we're not true business partners.
Right.
Like Manning's came in, and they saw a need, and they formed a Young Scholars Club based out of, off the Ron Clark Academy. They studied the Ron Clark Academy, and they got the scholars in those uniforms, and they were kids who were leaders that hadn't found their potential. They had they weren't leading the right people, so we had to shift, and they did it. Manning's shifted those kids' mindset. I went from kids fighting to kids saying, how do I do student council next year?
Yeah.
It was amazing.
That's incredible.
Incredible.
Well, do you have any other life philosophies that you'd like to share with everyone? I think
Just if you have a dream, or if there's a thought, your thoughts can turn into dreams, and just don't ever second guess yourself. If I would have said, I'm not doing this again, then, but I'll continue. And I always say, as long as God gives me Tuesdays, I'll read.
Yeah, every day, every Tuesday. Well, tell everybody where they can find you online. I know you've got the page for Tucked In Tuesday.
Homer Drive Facebook page. And then I have an Instagram, Tucked In Tuesday. It's kind of personal, I share the books that I read, but I don't really share my stories except on my personal page and the Homer Drive page. And they've told me about different places I can do it, but I like that interaction on Facebook Live. So Facebook Live, 7:30 every night. There's 1 to 2 books that I'll read.
All right. Well, let's wrap this up. You're welcome back anytime. I'm always trying to get some of the guests early that I think are going to go straight to the top, because there's going to come a day where your inbox is going to be too full for somebody like me.
Oh, no,
and
never.
So I wanted to get you as soon as I could, and I thank you for coming the day before the teachers come back to work. I know it's going to be this. Tomorrow's like the Super Bowl for the professors that are coming back
It is.
to Bobcat University.
Yes, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Sounds good when I hear someone else say it.
Oh, sure. We'll keep the positive energy, keep smiling, and you're doing great things in the community. You've already impacted thousands of people. So we really appreciate what you're doing, and thank you for rubbing the positive energy off on me as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
All right. See you next time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Hey, if you haven't already, check out my Patreon page. I'd love to have one new patron on Patreon this month. Just go to www.patreon.com/Tyler Knows Everything. That's www.patreon.com/Tyler Knows Everything, just all together, one word. You can support this podcast for as little as $5. And along with that, you'll get special access, merch, and different things along the way for supporting the great cause. We'll see you next time on the Tyler Knows Everything podcast, where the nose is crossed out because I always want to learn more. See you next week.